Hey everyone! Welcome back to the Cunning Card Mage channel, and I wanted to do something a tad bit different today. Something that I felt could be definitely useful and all that kind of stuff. If you have gone through my Commander Breakdown playlist, and if you haven't, I will put a link to the playlist that has all the different Commander breakdowns, and also right here in the top of the video to click on to go look at because there's quite a few and I'm mostly proud of a lot of them. There is one video that has not done as well as the others, and that is the deck that we're going to be talking about today. And that is none other than the Final Fantasy Commander Precon Limit Break with our boy Cloud Strife X Soldier. I really want to talk about this because I'm not as happy with how that video came out due to the fact that part of that was me talking about the upgrades of what I want to put in before I ever did it and not giving a lot of insight into the deck. So today that is something that we are going to try to change. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So the commander of this deck is Cloud X Soldier, a two colorless red, green, and white, or Naya as it's called, I believe. I might be wrong on that, and if I am, whoops. I try to remember all the color pairings, at least the 3 and 2. But he has the ability of haste when he enters, attach up to one target equipment you control, and when he attacks, draw a card for each equipped attacking creature you control, and then, if Cloud has power 7 or greater, create 2 treasure tokens. Now, Cloud is a pretty decent commander in his own right, and much like the commander from the Fallout precon of Dogmeat, is very focused on doing the Voltron kind of playstyle. Voltron being the playstyle where you have your one commander, and a lot of the game is you're attaching a bunch of equipments or auras to make them bigger and stronger as much as you can. And Cloud is no exception. Some of the other examples of Voltrons would be my Wolverine, Dogmeat, Captain America, and, you know, even like Killian. The precon that they put out earlier this year with the Silver Quill precon, where you're entirely focused on wanting to attach a lot of auras to things. Now, with Cloud, there's a lot of really fun cards in the deck that I very much enjoy. And some of those cards are none other than Sephiroth Fallen Hero. Now, if you've seen my Ishin video, which I will put right here, I have a version of this card in that deck because I very much enjoy Sephiroth's first ability. Now, Sephiroth is a 3 colorless Boros, which is red white, 7/5, with the abilities of when he attacks, you may put a cell counter on target creature, and until end of turn, each modified creature you control has base power and toughness 7/5. I very much love this because that makes each of your characters that or creatures that you have on the board with an equipment attached to them, base power and toughness 7/5 right out the gate. Love that. And then you can pay 3 and sacrifice a modified creature to return him from the battlefield, from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. I think this is a really wonderful creature and even a commander in his own right if you wanted to try to build around him. And I think that could be a great idea. This deck also has the backup commander of Tifa Martial Artist, one colorless, and Naya, which is red, green, white. A 4/4 with melee, which melee is whenever this creature attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each opponent you attacked this combat. And whenever one or more creatures you control with power 7 or greater deal combat damage to a player, untap all creatures you control, and if it's the first combat phase of your turn, there's an additional combat phase after. I really love a lot of this deck because I think it's a pretty decent deck in its own right, and I believe a lot of the Final Fantasy precons were some of the best that they've made in a hot minute because they're just really fun to pilot. One of the flavor losses for this deck, though, that I think was a huge mess up on their part was not including the Buster Sword. Now, if you don't know Final Fantasy VII or Cloud Strife, the Buster Sword is his titular weapon. So it was kind of confusing that they didn't include that card in the deck. Yes, technically speaking, there is a Buster Swords in it, but their version is the Hero's Blade artifact equipment with the Buster Sword in the art. So, whenever I went about trying to upgrade this deck, that was one of the things I wanted to add to it because I was able to pull the Buster Sword. So, whenever it came time for me to upgrade this deck, I did what I tend to do, which is following the EDH rec suggestions and took out a lot of the cards that either I myself didn't enjoy or felt would be decent to get rid of. Those cards are Avalanche of Sector 7, Kate Sith Fortune Teller, Explorer Scope, Furious Rise, A Digger Shinra Executive, Hellkite Tyrant, Inspiring Sanctuary, Mask of Memory, Skull Clamp, Soldier Military Program, and Summon Kujata. Now, these cards in their own right aren't bad. It was just something that I wasn't a huge fan of with my specific playstyle whenever it came to pirating this deck, that I decided I would be better off getting rid of a lot of them. So, whenever I went to, upgrading, I did the other part that I tend to do when it comes to upgrading precons, which is looking at EDH rec. And what I tried to do was swap in cards that were either equal mana value from what I got rid of or slightly less. So some of the things I added were Adelbart Steiner from the Final Fantasy set because he's a pretty decent creature that would get buffed up normally just because of how this deck plays. I also added Beatrix Loyal General, a 4 colorless, 2 white, 4/4 human soldier with vigilance, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may attach any number of equipment you control to target creature you control, which I think is a really great thing for, again, the Cloud deck because you have her out, then you can easily just attach all these things for free, even if you already have Pure Steel Paladin out, which gives all your equipments you control equip 0 if you control 3 or more artifacts. I really enjoy that card. I also added in Bruno Battlehammer from the first Dungeons and Dragons set, which gives your creatures you control +2/+0 for each equipment attached to it, and you may pay 0 rather than pay the equip cost for the first equip ability you activate each turn. Another great thing to make some of your more dense equip cost creatures a lot cheaper. Also added in Lightning Army of One, a first strike trample lifelink with whenever lightning deals combat damage to a player until your next turn. If a source would deal damage to that player or a permanent that player controls, it deals double that damage instead. I also added in Squall Leonhart from the bonus sheet, which is Danitha Capithan Capuchin Paragon, which has First Strike, Vigilance, and Lifelink, which gives auras and equipment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, which again, great thing to add because that will make your, equipments that much cheaper to cast, which is never a bad thing. I also added in Tifa from the Final Fantasy set, and then I added in Weapons Vendor from the set, which has the ability of at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control an equipment, you may pay a colorless and you can attach target equipment you control to target creature you control. Another great thing that is going to make, attaching equipments to things that much cheaper. I also added in Tifa's Limit Break because it's a really good instant combat trick that if you have the mana for it, you can either double target creatures' power and toughness or triple their power and toughness until end of turn, which is never a bad thing to do, especially if you're swinging out and they didn't block or something along those lines. As mentioned, I added in the titular Buster Sword, which is a three colorless artifact equipment, which gives equipped creature +3/+2. And when it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, and then you may cast a spell from your hand with mana value less than or equal to the damage without paying its mana cost, which is just a great card in its own right. And last but not least, I added Genji Glove, which gives equipped creature double strike, and when it attacks, if it's the first combat phase of the turn, untap it, and there will be an additional combat phase. All in all, I really enjoy the Cloud deck. The biggest issue I have is the past few times I've played it, it's been not very well on the equipment side. I've kind of been starved of equipment in my draws, but I think the only way to fix that is getting rid of some of the creatures and then adding in a lot more artifacts or equipments to make it even more dense. I also just if you are able to, just picking up the precon, because it's a pretty decent precon in its own right. And that's really about all I wanted to say with this. As usual, if you enjoyed this kind of content, feel free to leave a like. It really helps me feel more confident in posting these. If you enjoyed this deck or have another commander you want me to look at, leave a comment down below and I'll try to build a commander deck and then make one of these videos for it in the future. And as always, if you enjoy my content, hit the subscribe and hit the bell so that you get notified for when I make content. And that's about it. So I will see y'all in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.